Hello, I hope you're doing great. Today, we are going to see a small example on how you can improve your code using a tool named NDepend. I recently learned of this tool due to a LinkedIn post by David Guida or Guida. I don't know how you pronounce that name. I'm sorry, David or David. I don't know how you pronounce your name. My apologies if I pronounce it wrong. This tool basically allows you to do some static code analysis and find code smells, and it's really good. Now, before we continue, please remember to visit fairplaytube.pticostarica.com, click the Buy Me a Coffee icon, select a donation of your preference, and this will allow us to keep the videos and products free for you. Okay, so the tool. You can download the tool in ndepend.com, and you can see in the documentation it says, as a static analyzer, NDepend will likely find hundreds or even thousands of issues affecting your code base. Stopping work to attempt to fix all issues for weeks will be quite unproductive. This is why NDepend is the only tool that proposes to focus on progress since a baseline. The tool estimates the technical depth evolution since the baseline. Recent code smells that should be fixed before committing any code to source control are highlighted in the code just edited. As a consequence, the code quality remains under control with no major upfront investment. So I already gave a small test on this tool, the trial, and one of the things that it allows you to do is actually find a lot of like gives you some estimate on what will be the effort on fixing some issues, right? And if you have worked in software development for companies for a long time, you will see that there is a huge quantity of software development projects where you have, for example, your code it's full of warnings and messages, right? If you have a small code, a small um, system, that may not be um, that bad, right? However, when things start to grow and you start creating big applications, when your system starts to grow a lot and a lot, your warnings will actually increase a lot. So you won't be seeing 0 or 10. You will be seeing hundreds, though hundreds, yeah. I believe it actually has a limit. I remember that I have seen before some limits on the one of the results in Visual Studio, right? And you fix something, right? You think you are doing a lot of progress, and then you see that the actual messages increases again, right? And it becomes a pain, right? And it becomes a huge technical debt, right? That is usually never solved because people start delaying and delaying it and delaying it and delaying. So the best way to actually solve that issue is solve it from the root, solve it from the start, from the beginning, right? How do you do it? Guaranteeing that your software development process has good processes, steps, and companion tools that will allow you to increase its quality and reduce the unwanted messages or potential issues, right? We have already talked about things like testing, right? Things like using Visual Studio code analysis, right? And the code cleanup. And now you can use this tool NDepend. So after you install it, one of the things that you will see is that if you go to the Solution Explorer, I think, if I remember correctly, you will see NDepend. And well, it says no independent analysis result loaded. Click to load one. That's because I remove all of the changes. But here in extensions, you will see NDepend. And if it is the first time you load a project, or if you haven't really connect NDepend to your project, you will do it by go to extensions, NDepend, attach new NDepend project to current BS solution, and you will get this message, right, or this screen. It says attach the new NDepend project to BS solution. In this case, we are looking at Fairplay 2, which is the next generation of video sharing portals that we are creating. Uh, Tells you there are 13 Visual Studio solution assemblies, and all of those 13 will be analyzed. Uh, it says it has a filter in there, right? It says resolve the assemblies of this Visual Studio solution under a folder root recursive, right? And the tests are filtered out because uh, it may make sense or not to analyze it. Then we click the analyze all of the assemblies, and if we want, we can check this build report. So we click analyze, and it will start performing. It performs a build, right? And it performs some code analysis, right? So in here we have things like a lot of messages in here, right? So begin full analysis with NDepend, Visual Studio solution, right? And then you see that when it finishes, it actually gives me this screen. So we can go and see the dashboard, right? Or show the interactive graph, browse the code, rules, right? So we go to the dashboard. It will load the dashboard in Visual Studio, as you can see, right? You can click run analysis on current project, or run analysis on current project and build report, right? In here we have some results, baseline, yeah, this is the same project, right? Lines of code is 5,289, right? There are no difference. This is actually the first time I run it in this solution after I had undone my previous test changes. Estimated development effort to solve all of this, it says 189 days, right? Development, estimated development effort, I'm sorry. So let's see, you can click a lot of this, right? And it will take you to the here, right? And you see that in here there is a some documentation, and you can read what that means. So estimated dev effort per type, maintenance days. It says the estimated effort to develop a code element is obtained from the depth setting, estimated number of man days to develop 1000 logical lines of code value, and from the code element number of logical lines of code. This query shows the estimated effort value per type in maintenance days. Okay, and now you can see that in here I got like a lot of interesting results, right? That are marked, let's say in red, I would say, right? And we can go and see maybe why that's marked in red, right? So it says effort to development day 0.47, and this one says 3 hours 44, right? Minutes. So let's see. It says this one takes 7 hours and 55 minutes, and see what that means. So there is something in this class, right? Visitor tracking client service, right? You can open the source declaration, right, and start analyzing your code and figure out what's going on there. Uh, you can also go to your dashboard, and around here see that we have here this fail, right? So these are kind of, they call it quality gates, right? And you see that if you click in the number, it will take you to a lot. It actually opened this, right? And it opened also this one in here. So I have in here a couple of, okay, I click this quality gates and we have in here quality gates evolution, percentage coverage, right? 4 rules were violated, right? It says which ones, avoid types long, right? And if I double click it, you will see these are the types that are marked as long, right? And we could fix it, right? Now, I know in this case, I do not care about having those long types, and it's actually by design. So I could do things like select issues, right? Uh, Sorry, not in here. Yeah, ambient types, no. There was a place where you can actually say things like, um, there are some issues where you can actually mark them as, ignore that rule, right? Suppress the rule as you do with a lot of issues in Visual Studio. Not in here, not in here, not in here. Well, we'll see. Let's see another one. Code smells, for example. Let's see this one. Avoid types with too many methods, right? See, this is what I was meaning. Suppress issue. I believe this one does not have suppress issue. I didn't see it. Yeah, that one does not have it. This one, it seems to have it, right? And at least in this version, I didn't. I don't think this one actually modifies your code. It lets me add like open source declaration, right? But it didn't actually let me write anything in here nor anything in here. Just it kind of gave me what I should add in there, right? And then I will go copy this. This is in the video service, right? And I will put it in there, right? In this case, I will need to add the using to this, or I could do this. I would say, I will think remove the unnecessary using. Well, that's interesting. Okay, suppress message, right? And then I could do something like by design or whatever you want to put in there, right? And in theory, next time you run these rules, that should be ignored, right? And that's one of the things I have seen. There's a lot in here that I actually do not understand yet, but it's cool to know. Let's see, here we have like issues, hike issues 76, right? So it says one rule says don't use obsolete types. So let's see this one actually. Get public insights URL. This is interesting because why it says I am using an obsolete type. If this is actually a, this is just a string, there is a lambda and there is culture info. I don't see anything in there that might be obsolete type, right? That's interesting. Oh, don't use obsolete types, methods, or fields. So let's see, the description says the attribute system.obsolete attribute is used to tag types, methods, or fields of an API that clients shouldn't use because these code elements will be removed sooner or later. This rule warns about methods that use a type, a method, a field tag with system.obsolete attribute. So get public insights is basically this URL, right? So here I'm using a string. There is no type in there. There is this type, and this is basically just a keyword that um, maps to the string class. So I wonder if maybe one of these interfaces or one of these it's actually marked as obsolete, which as far as I know, those shouldn't, right? And the other thing that I am using in here will be the culture info. So let's see, culture info, I don't think it may be. So two-letter ISO or ISO language. So let's see, does not seem to be marked as obsolete. Huh. Oh, but it's virtual, so that's okay. Culture UI doesn't seem to be marked as obsolete. Culture info is not marked as obsolete. Clonable, no. By format provider. Hmm. So I have no idea why that one was recognized as obsolete if it actually is indicating that those are this is using something obsolete in this method, which is basically a lambda. Uh, Name. Nope, that's interesting. I have no idea why it is using something like why it's giving me that error, right? Okay, attribute classes should be sealed. So it takes me to common resource key attribute. Now this is interesting. Actually, I had no idea it was recommended to have your attribute classes as sealed. And it actually makes sense in a lot of scenarios because attribute classes are many times or often used to add specific predefined behavior to your properties or classes, and you usually do not want anyone to inherit or to modify that default behavior, right? So it makes sense to make them sealed, right? So this is actually a rule that I know I will be applying. What else we have in here? Nested types should not be visible. So it says nested type should not be visible. Which types? So let's see. Constants plus upload limits. Okay. Now this one is probably one that I will not apply. And anyway, it is a warning. I will probably not apply it because I am using this to basically have a hierarchy on structures to hard-coded values instead of having them through all of the application. Basically, what I have is a constant class with subclasses, and each of those subclass is going to have a constant for the actual value, right? And this is just to maintain a hierarchy, having all of the hard-coded values in this file instead of having them in my whole application, right? You see that even the routes for the pages and for the APIs are actually defined in here. So that's something that I know I will leave like that, right? Unless there is a better way to do it that will allow me to keep the hierarchy, right? And just one file. Empty static constructor can be discarded. So let's see. Okay, it says it's in a system configurator, pages error. This is probably the auto-generated page that it's created in your when you create a Blazor application or usually a Razor application. I believe they create that default page and the default page error page. Okay, declare types in namespaces. Interesting because it didn't show me anything in there, right? There is one apparently, but if I expand it, I do not see anything. So this is probably an enumeration or something that is out of a namespace. Yeah. Let's see what else we have in here. Architecture. So let's see. Avoid partitioning the code base through many small library, right? So this one I do not know like exactly how to see it, right? But it says avoid partitioning the code base through many small library assemblies. Each .NET assembly compiled represents one or several physical files. Having too many library .NET assemblies is a symptom of considering physical .NET assemblies as logical components. We advise having less and bigger .NET assemblies and using the concept of namespaces to define logic components. Benefits are faster compilation time. That may not be true, right? Faster startup time for your program may or may not be true. May not be that true. I do not know exactly how the Visual Studio Compiler works, but I will guess that there are a lot of threads compiling multiple files at the same time or things like that, right? Easier deployment thanks to less files to manage. That's actually true uh, in some scenarios, right? If you are just deploying one application, uh, like this is a tiered based application architecture, right? So basically I just publish my main website and it publishes my client side too because it's Blazor WebAssembly with .NET Core hosted API based on the default template where you have your server project having a reference to the client side, and when you publish it, basically you connect to the same server and the clients download the Blazor WebAssembly portion to their browsers, right? But it's effectively just one hosted application. So for me, in this specific project, the deployment, it doesn't matter if it's one file, one project. In this specific solution, it doesn't matter if it's just one project or multiple projects, right? And I know that anyway, I wouldn't apply that rule because I like to have my projects separated this way. One project for the server, one project for the client, one project for the client services, which are basically the HTTP wrappers to the calls for the calls to the API. A common project where I have the constants and a lot of shared code that is being used through all the rest of the projects. The components, which is a components project that is used in the client side, but is also prepared for the next phase of the for the next phase of Fairplay 2 solution, which is the MAUI Blazor application, right? And we are going to reutilize a lot of those components. So by design, that components project exists because we are going to reuse that to reduce the need of writing duplicated code. I did this in the controllers in a separate project because the system configurator, at least the initial version, had some interesting code to analyze by reflection the controllers, and I only wanted to have a reference to the controllers project because I only cared about the types in that specific project. So this was a quick solution to do that. The data access, this is actually a auto-generated code using EF Core Power Tools reverse engineered based on the database project. So I want to have that project separated, right? So as you can see, there are a lot of solutions that you can see if you want to apply them or if you do not want to apply them, right? So for example, this one, yeah, I will ignore that one, right? Suppress issue, let's see, and it says you can put this, right? Let's see what else. Security. Let's see the one about security. Do not use system random for security purposes. So let's see what it says. How to fix issues of this rule. If the match method is meant to be executed in a security critical context, use system security, cryptography, random number generator. Okay. So let's see what is the issue. Oh, this is on the weather forecast that I haven't deleted. And that actually uses the random around here, range.next. So it's probably because of that. That will be deleted actually, so not really a lot. I don't really care a lot. Immutability, naming conventions, static fields, naming conventions. So let's see this one. System configurator, I do not care about that one. And these ones are basically default ASP.NET, so those files actually could be deleted. Instance fields naming convention 6 in those same files. So I do not care about that one. Source files organization. Avoid duplicating a type definition across assemblies. Yeah, the pages error. This one looks a little bit there. Avoid defining multiple types in a source file. Now, I agree with this one uh, sometimes, right? So, for example, we have this PayPal type. I didn't write this code. Basically, what I did to generate this code is I consumed the API, right? I got the JSON. Actually, in some cases, I got the JSON result from the examples in the APIs. I utilize the edit, paste special, paste JSON as classes, right? And I paste that. That actually allows you to reduce the code that you need to write because Visual Studio will do it for you automatically, right? So when I use that kind of approach and when I am doing like this is effectively a set of classes that will be part of one main class uh, used in JSON serialization and deserialization, right? So in those cases, by design, I want to have all of that in one file because I know those types are basically linked and they all belong together. So in this case, basically what I will do is I will suppress the issue because by design we are doing it like this, right? Net framework usage, I haven't seen that this one. System collections, so collection properties should be read only. So let's see this one, application role. Uh, application role. So this one, I don't think it should be applied. Why? Because this is basically the entity framework part or the entity framework context and DB sets and models definitions, right? If I remove this set in there, probably entity framework will stop working. And actually, I may even get an error, right? I do not know how that will work, but that's something to check. I believe it will give me an error. System globalization, float and date parsing must be culture aware. And yes, that is actually extremely true, right? Now, it may depend where you are using it, right? If you are using this piece of code in multiple regions or cultures, you may want to do that, right? I know this is always going to be published to the same server. So, and I am not reutilizing that culture in any other place. So it may or may not make sense to do it. So it says float and date parsing must be culture aware. So let's see. I do not know if it is this one. So I have a couple of two strings, and I believe the two strings actually can receive the culture. And let's see if there is a parse or something in here. Float and date parsing. So I'll need to check that. Uh, in 64. Oh, that's what it receives, right? So it receives the video job ID. That's just a comparison. I don't see a parse in here. I have widths there. These are enumerations. Oh, that's there. Compared to decimal, I think. Yeah, maybe one of these is the guilty one, right? So we'll need to figure out. But yeah, the tool actually seems really, really good. It has like a lot of recommendations that you can see. And actually, something I didn't show you is that when you run the tool, it will actually create a lot of files in here. And I believe some of these files are actually how they keep track of your progress um, of your progress. Info warnings, XML, right? There is a report, right? There are a couple of files that it adds, and well, it has also a lot of images, right? But yeah, NDepend trend data XML, yeah, the trend metrics, right? So I believe it uses a lot of that, so that the next time you run it, actually you can create like comparisons, right? And you will be improving your code. So the tool seems really good. There are some things that I really agree that should be implemented, right? Some other things you may not want to add it, so you can mark them as suppressed or deleted, right? Figure out. But this will allows you to improve your code quality a lot, which is extremely important in big platforms. Hopefully this has been useful for you. Thank you very much. You have a great